Welcome back, everyone, to the Reading by Candlelight Book Club at Molly's Cottage. I'm here with Michelle Prak, author of Barren, 𝘁𝐴𝑗𝐵, which features in the April Crime and Thriller book box. Welcome, Michelle. We're thrilled to have you with us.
And I'm thrilled to be here. Thank you, Fiona.
A little bit about Michelle. She lives in Adelaide and has had a 30-year career in PR, social media, and politics as a professional communicator. Michelle has been writing all her life, studied journalism, had several short stories published as well as 3 self-published novels, and her debut thriller, The Rush, became an explosive bestseller for very good reason. If you haven't read it yet, you should, because it was one of my favourite books published in 2023 and definitely my favourite debut book for that year.
Wow, I'm blown away. That's a wonderful endorsement.
Honestly, it was such a thrilling ride. You could not put that book down. And the twist was fabulous. Didn't see it coming. Absolutely loved it.
Thank you.
And now you're back with another exciting thriller. Can you tell us a little bit about Barren, 𝘁𝐴𝑗𝐵 without revealing any spoilers?
I'll try my best. So Barren, 𝘁𝐴𝑗𝐵, like The Rush, is a thriller set in South Australia, and it follows 2 young women, Mac and Erica, who are flatmates, except that one day they're turfed out of their flat because the lease is terminated. And they spend some time, like a lot of people today, applying for different rentals and being unsuccessful. So after some months, Erica luckily can return to the family home, but Mac doesn't have that option. She spends a lot of time couch surfing with her very frustrated friends. And she's quite frustrated with the situation herself, and one day goes for a coastal drive and finds an abandoned resort. So it's an empty construction site that was effectively mothballed after COVID. And it has hundreds of empty rooms. So when night falls, Mac breaks in and sets up camp in one of those rooms, becoming a squatter. She thinks she has privacy and independence at last, if only for a very short time. But what she doesn't know is that she's not the first person to have set up there, and more people are going to arrive. That's the spiel.
Oh my goodness. It's like, honestly, it's terrifying because like anything abandoned terrifies the life out of me. I'm not good with the dark either.
Oh, there's lots of dark in this.
Yeah. So just the fact that it's so like isolated and spooky, it already gives me the vibes. Now,
Fantastic.
what was the seed of inspiration for this story? Did it begin with the characters or the setting, or maybe just what if?
It began with a what if and then the setting. Essentially, after the rush, I was fiff-faffing around with a few manuscripts. I'd do a few, 20,000 words here, 50 here, and nothing was really sticking. And I wasn't in love with any of them. And during a family holiday at the beach, I was writing every day, as I do, and sort of mucking around with this notion of a world where things had gone really bad, a little bit like a pandemic, and people had to flee the city. And because I was at a beach house, it was kind of a fantasy of mine that if everything went dark and I had to set up somewhere, wouldn't it be amazing to just set up in a 2-story luxury beach house? I mean, even if I had to break in, I'd be willing to do it. And so it was a bit of a silly story, but at the same time dystopian. And it was starting to give me that nice shiver that you want when you're planning out your next book. As I said, though, it was dystopian, so it didn't become Barren, 𝘁𝐴𝑗𝐵, but it was the seed that I leapt from, if you like. And you can see the parallels already with how I've described Barren, 𝘁𝐴𝑗𝐵, ending up with Mac, finding sanctuary at the beach.
Now, setting plays a huge role in Barren, 𝘁𝐴𝑗𝐵. It's almost like a character in its own right. And there is a map. It is well known how much I love a book with a map because it reminds me of my favorite books when I was younger. Agatha Christie,
Really.
Lighton. How good is that map? Because they always had maps. I just feel that really good crime books have maps. How did you go about creating such a vivid sense of place?
I suppose that came from the location I was in when I started drafting this story. And I do love that part of South Australia. It's the 𝘭𝘢𝘴𝘵 Peninsula, and my family have, for a very long time, had annual holidays there. And so I knew the landscape really well. And it was somewhere where, I don't only like to holiday, but I wanted to spend even more time, with it inside a book. So that's where it came from. This one of the beaches that we go to quite often, except I had to make that beach a little less attractive because I did want that isolation. I didn't want the resort to have succeeded. The beach that I based it on is a small cove, however, where it's hemmed in, by a cape, if you like, and by a rocky beach. So there's not much suburban sprawl. And so it was inspired by that, but I did add more gritty elements like the slippery rocks and the seaweed and the cave. So that's how I built that landscape.
That's great. And who did the map for you?
That map is based on a very rudimentary and rough sketch that I made in PowerPoint, one of my favorite programs. So I really needed that too to guide my writing, because I needed to be able to describe Mac creeping around the resort, where she was breaking in, and where other characters were, where they were running and hiding. And I handed that lovely PowerPoint over to my publisher and asked, it was my idea, and I'm so glad they said yes. I asked if I could please have a map in the book. So yeah, I'm just delighted that it's there, and I think it will help guide readers as well.
Yeah, how long did the writing process take you from idea to publication?
Oh, that's so tricky because, as you've just heard, I can jump around from projects. I'd say that if I was had a timer next to me, I would have spent more than a year on Barren Cape by myself before my publisher had eyes on it, and then, as you can imagine, was working on that with my agent and then my publisher for some months as well. So it met between 12 and 18 months to produce this.
Yes, I remember seeing you on socials locking yourself away for the editing process. Was there any unexpected challenges along the way for you?
Yeah, there always are, I suppose. I really do value that feedback from my publisher and agent. And for the most part, when they give me that feedback, I do think their ideas are fantastic. And so I suppose one of the surprising things was how much they wanted me to up the ante. Well, it was a good reminder to me of what a good thriller should be, and that perhaps I'd left too much off the page, or there was maybe too much subtlety in some of the characters. And so they were really cheering me from the sidelines in this book, which they didn't need to do so much in the rush, but cheering me from the sidelines here to say, let's up the ante, let's make these baddies badder, let's scare everybody even more, let's go darker.
I love that. And it isn't a spoiler to say that the novel exposes the ever-increasing problem of homelessness among the young due to rentals now being converted to Airbnbs. Is that something you hope readers take away from reading the story?
Yeah, absolutely. So that theme of the housing crisis and the rental crisis is a strong one throughout. From the very outset, it's something that Mac and Erica are grappling with. And as grim a subject as that is, of course, it was an opportunity to place characters in these risky situations. And when I was drafting the book, at the same time, I was sort of keeping an eye on news and social media posting about the rental crisis. We see it discussed around ourselves all the time. It's such a, hot button topic, or really prevalent in news coverage now. So that helped me perhaps learn a little bit more and put myself in the shoes of people who are experiencing these issues, to develop some empathy. And you know, you just asked how long I was working on this book. When I did begin working on it some time ago, part of me wondered whether this rental crisis would maybe not be as large as it is now. Maybe it would have been ameliorated, or politicians might have come up with answers, but surprise, they haven't. It's gotten even worse. So really, the theme is as pertinent as it was when I began drafting it.
That's interesting, but also very sad.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's shocking. And so I do think readers looking through Mac's eyes, they'll follow her journey of realizing that she's homeless as well. You know, it's a funny state of affairs to be in. You think you're just temporarily staying with friends. But after she exhausts so many options, like a hotel, caravan parks, you know, her mother, for better or for worse, you know, she hops onto a website and tries to research and identify whether there's any government services for her in particular, and there aren't, because she does actually earn an income.
Yeah.
She's got an income, she can pay rent, she just can't find a suitable lease. So I think, yeah, readers might have some insights into what other people are going through Barren 𝘁𝑚.
Excellent. Now, I love your writing, Michelle. Your stories have such strong characterization and some excellent twists. How do you approach creating suspense and tension without resorting to cliches?
I think the way I approach avoiding cliches is trying to be, I suppose, credible and authentic with how I build characters, but also being a little bit spare with my writing. I think that helps. So, you know, I have a journalism background, and that means that I perhaps like to be less flowery with writing. I strive to look out for cliches, but you know, we all fold them in somehow. They get in there. I think that lends some authenticity to it, so it doesn't, you know, go down cliche land. So yeah, the journalism training definitely helps with crafting that kind of book. And in terms of the question of building suspense, I think, like a lot of thriller and crime writers, I've just consumed thrillers and crimes for so long, so many decades, you know, it can just seep out of my skin. It's what I read, it's what I watch. And after a while, you just sort of imbibe that rhythm, and it's almost instinctual. You know where to leave that cliffhanger, you know how to build that peak, and then to give the readers a little bit of respite, but then to keep rolling on.
Yes. Yes. Knowing your genre is so important. But I do agree with you. I think that having a journalism background is really an interesting point, because I think that you, not that you sound the same as, but it's very similar writing to Jane Harper, Chris Hammer, Michael Robotham. It's that not putting too much on the page and leaving some to the reader's imagination, which is what makes them page turners. And I think that, you know, honestly, having that journalism background has probably just done you all so well, because look how many journalists become crime and thriller authors.
That's right. There's a lot of them.
There is, and all their books are fabulous. Now, this is interesting, because I think too, not only the journalism career, but having a 30-year career in communications and PR must have shaped your approach to storytelling. How do you think that it's helped you in any way?
Yes, yes. So I've been a PR consultant, and I've worked in PR roles in government, including being a media spokesperson. I think one of the great advantages of being in PR for so long is that you do learn to take feedback on board, and you learn how to collaborate and take criticism on the chin, and just appreciate input and other people looking over your shoulder. A lot of my PR work was writing. So, you know, writing media releases, speeches, you know, even a little bit of ghost writing for clients in terms of letters. So it was writing and writing and writing continually, but then expecting that someone would come in and want to question it, to change a few words. And, you know, as a PR consultant, and especially a very busy one, that you develop a very thick skin, I suppose. So when I had feedback from my agent, you know, I've heard a lot of different reactions from authors. But I really welcomed it. I was so excited by feedback, just the thought of someone else looking at my writing and that they were going to offer me another idea as well and try to sharpen it and make it even better. That I was really excited by that. So I think the journalism and PR background helped me not to be too sensitive or dwell on the feedback, but just roll up my sleeves and get stuck into it really quickly.
That's
So
a
yeah.
fabulous attitude.
Mm.
Yes. Yes, I love editing, and I think that that's, you know, having a thick skin really helps, and never ever taking it personally, just going, yes, somebody has looked at this and they want to help you. And I think that's a really fabulous attitude. And
Thanks.
speaking to many authors, I've learned that second books are very different beasts. What was it like releasing your debut novel, The Rush, and then following it up with Barren Cape? Did you find that you had a different process or mind shift in between?
I definitely had a different mind shift, and you would have heard other writers say this. I did feel a little bit more pressure, or maybe not so much pressure, but there's this notion that you have to continually improve, and I think most writers do, and we want to. So there was a personal expectation that the second book would be better, and that means, you know, scarier, deeper characters, even better building of the setting. So that was a very different shift. And there was, well, I suppose I'm an author that didn't sign a two-book deal. And that
Oh,
was a decision that we made. And partly because I didn't want another deadline. And there's pros and cons to that. So I think that might have been one of the reasons I did that fifth faffing that I've mentioned, and one of the reasons I had these silly manuscripts. But that also was part of my process. And I'm really grateful that I didn't have that deadline, but I had that, yeah, still that different pressure of my publisher did want another book. And I knew that it had to be at least as good, but hopefully better than The Rush. So that was a very different experience for me.
yes, it would be. And you've just had your launch for Barren
Yeah.
Cape. How was that?
That was so much fun. And again, that was really different though. I'm finding the promotional aspect and the events more relaxing. You know, obviously this is my second go around with that. But I had a slightly different attitude as well. I suppose with The Rush, wondering if that might be my only shot and not knowing how it would go. I put, you know, a lot of effort into a big bang party for that first launch with a massive venue, and it was effectively like an empty hall, and my family had to drag these chairs in. We had to set up the bar. We had a sponsor. We brought the wine in. I filled the cups with snacks, right? So it was very much event planning. But this time around, I wanted the actual launch to be a little bit more low key and chill. And it was at a bar where we didn't have to set up any chairs, etc. And it was nice low lighting, and I just felt it was very intimate and relaxed. And I'm really glad I took that approach and had a different experience.
Yes, that sounds lovely.
It was.
What has been the most rewarding part of being a published author so far?
The most rewarding aspect is when readers understand what you were trying to do. And I'm really enjoying that with Barren Cape right now, especially with the bookstagrammers. The way they've interpreted what I've tried to lay out, it just makes your heart sing to think that, yes, of course, these are clever people and they have understood the themes, they understand the battles between some of the characters, they're being empathetic to this homelessness issue. you know, you do wonder whether they might digest or interpret the book really differently. But I've seen, especially over the last 2 weeks, some of the reflections about Erica and Mac, and it's like they have, you know, I have a very short character Bible, but it's like they have consulted my character Bible.
I
They
love
know the ingredients, and I think that that's so rewarding. That's a really wonderful to read that.
I mean, bookstagrammers are wonderful, especially here in Australia, and they're very supportive of Australian authors, and they are very intuitive. I mean, they read a lot.
Mm,
Yes.
love them.
Now, do you have any advice for aspiring writers working on their first manuscript, like me in particular?
This is a tricky one because I do like to try to think of something different, because a lot of us listen to writing podcasts and we hear all sorts of advice. And often the most sage advice is something that we've heard many times. So I'm trying to come at it a little differently and share something that I tell myself that I think works for me. And that is, be honest with yourself, also known as don't kid yourself. So by that, I mean, if you've written a chapter and you know it's not quite right, be honest with yourself. Don't just leave it in there and hope it's going to go unnoticed. Go back to it when you're ready, and work it, and make it better and bring it up to where you know it should be. Because I have now and again not been completely honest. I have tried to get away with things, and my agent and publisher have found those exact sections, and I've had to, you know, go back to something that I should have addressed in the first place. And another aspect of being honest with yourself, or not kidding yourself, is those procrastination things that we do. Yes, they're useful, and we all need habits and a rhythm, but I need to more often not kid myself that I'm working, because I know very well I've written 100 words, but I've spent 30 minutes on Instagram.
Yes.
So I've got to stop kidding myself. And it's like, I suppose, a little bit like taking medicine. You'll know you'll feel better for it. You just have to bloody well do it.
Yes. Yeah. As Joe says on the word count, just do the goddamn work.
Yes.
That's her favorite. And do you have any writing rituals or quirks you can share?
Yes, so that's closely related to what I've just said. I've accepted that when I do sit at the keyboard in the morning, I'm not going to crank open the manuscript immediately and, you know, be typing words. I need a warm up, and my warm up, for better or worse, is social media and news media sites. So I'm going to have to go through my tabs. I have to see the news headlines. I'm sorry. I have to go on Twitter still. I have to check my own socials. I have to check favorite hashtags. For a while, I used to rail against myself, but now I know that is just a ritual, and it literally is a brain warm up. And at the same time, it still puts me in the writing world, because all of my social media is set up to be in that writing and reading community. So it's fabulous to see other author announcements and people's book reviews. And that's my ritual. I don't do many physical things. I'm not a person with music around or candles or anything else. I'm a very digital person. And part of that is because I used to be a social media consultant too. So, you know, I'm building a terrible picture of myself as being
No,
addicted
you're
to
not. No, you're
brain, but
not.
it's true.
No, you're not, because I do the same thing. Like, I mean, it's not very well known, but for a very short time in my life, at the very start of my career, I worked as a journalist. And so I kind of think that I get a lot of information from looking at socials and from the news and things like that go into my book. And so if I wasn't doing that in the morning, sometimes it just gives you an idea and you go, bang, I can use that. I'm going to go use that now. But I
Yes.
agree with you. I just can't go in cold. I've got to warm myself up first.
Yeah, that's right. And thank you for saying that, because you've also reminded me that on social media, that's where I saw some of these stories from young people being homeless, and where I've started to follow influencers who are movers and shakers in that field and trying to bring about change. So yeah, we need to be open to ideas, don't we? And we're really
Oh,
lucky that we
yeah.
have social media that puts the world in front of us. Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, there are so many things out there that I learn through. I know, people say, oh, it's a waste of time and it's this and it's that. But there are things that I have learned that are just amazing. And I mean, and mostly about politics. And which is, we need to stay very, very informed about like that. But yeah, I just think that bringing this homelessness to the forefront is in your book is just an amazing thing to do, especially with what's going on in our world at the moment.
Thank you.
Now, what books and authors inspire you? I know that's a hard one, so if you can just share it.
Oh no, that's all
You've been
good.
reading.
Yeah, I do love Australian crime and thrillers. They're sensational. I often joke that I used to have this ambition that I'd catch up and read them all. And then I realized, hang on.
That's
There's,
never going to happen.
no, there's a heck of a lot out there, and some people keep publishing them. What's happening? So yeah, I have a lot of heroes, but they do include Candice Fox. I really admire her action thrillers. They are just jam-packed,
Oh yeah.
comes up with this amazing plot. So it's a joy to read her work. Her book, The Chase, in particular, is one of my favorites. Whenever I have to build up a list of book recommendations, she's usually on there with that. So I admire her and her writing style as well. And then another Australian writer, very similar, is 𝘬𝘫𝘬𝘬𝘬𝘬𝘬𝘬𝘬𝘬𝘬𝑗.
Oh yes, Gabe. Yeah,
Yeah. So
yeah.
with these Hunted series, which actually I didn't start reading it until after The Rush came out, and someone else in the industry mentioned that I should read him because I might enjoy him. They were correct. So yeah, I like to, I hold them on a pedestal and think one day I might be in the same stratosphere because they have the same sort of, I suppose, interest as I do. Not so much about developing crime and sort of procedural crime books, but more thrillers that center individuals and don't have much of a police presence. Thrillers where individuals are at risk and they have to save themselves. So I see that in a lot of their books.
And they are both similarly prolific. The
Yes, I
amount of
know.
the amount that Candace puts out and
Yeah,
Gabe,
every
my
year, I think.
he
Yeah,
writes in so many different section, like he
that's
writes
right. He
adult
writes for
crime
children.
thrillers, he writes middle year fiction, he writes plays,
Yes,
screenplays.
exactly.
Amazing
Yeah,
talent.
very
Yeah.
talented, very energetic and talented. That yeah, they're wonderful.
Are you able to tell us what you're working on next?
Yes, I'm very happy to say I haven't faffed around with book three too much. I have got it done as much as I can finish it at this point. My agent has seen it and she likes it. And so I am at that point where I'm just waiting for some positive feedback from the publisher. And it's another thriller, and I hope that I've turned it up a notch even more. I am trying with this third one to come out of the gate with action even sooner than I have. Having Candice Fox and 𝘬𝘫𝘬𝘬𝘬𝘬𝘬 on my shoulders. So yeah, all of last year I was working on book three. So I'm very happy that that's with somebody else for the moment and just waiting for some positive feedback, hopefully.
Oh, that's brilliant. So exciting because I mean, like I said, I love The Rush. I know I'm going to love Barren Cape. I've earmarked to read it over Easter because
Yay.
yes, because there are so many books to read and some books have to be pushed to the top. Your book is one of those. So, well, that is time on our interview. I know. How it goes so
Surely
fast.
not.
I'd like to thank you, Michelle, for chatting with me and for being Reading by Candlelight's April crime and thriller book box author.
Thank you so much. It's been wonderful to be part of this community.
Barren Cave is one of those thrillers that it's best not to know anything about going in. But be assured, like The Rush, Michelle's first thriller, it will be an edgy, gripping, and spine-tingling thriller that will make you want to read it as quickly as possible. It'll probably also leave you never looking at an abandoned building the same way again. Thank you, everyone, for coming along tonight and watching us live. If you're watching this on YouTube or listening to the podcast, I do hope you've enjoyed this episode. Let us know what you think in the Reading by Candlelight Facebook group or on socials. Thank you again, Michelle.
Thank you.
And wishing everybody happy reading and goodbye until the next Reading by Candlelight book club.